Hello and welcome back to Silver Age Silver Screen, a podcast where we watch, discuss, and review sci-fi, cult, superhero, and other stereotypically geeky works. And also, sometimes we do self-indulgent episodes like this, where we review our reviews of those movies. Yeah, we've been doing this for like a year, maybe 13 months, because I didn't schedule things properly. And we've reviewed a lot of movies, and we're gonna talk about our own reviews.
This episode is gonna be so on the nose and meta that my boy Dan Harmon is gonna be screaming in his pants.
Fuck, I don't even have a joke for that.
Yeah, no, neither do I. I just went with it. That's what I do. Go with the flow. My name is Riley Thorpe, and this is our quote-unquote 1-year anniversary of having our show.
And I am Casey Charms. I did not say my name earlier.
Yeah, no, but you said it now, and that's all that counts. They need to know the geniuses that are behind this show. And the reason why I'm a lot more vocal and excited at the beginning of the show nowadays, at this episode, is because it's our 1-year anniversary. And we've been doing this for a little over a year. A lot's happened. A lot has happened. You know, the world ended.
Yeah, just once or twice.
A lot of movies. A lot of great movies. A lot of really bad ones. But that's what we're here to talk about today. So, Casey, what exactly are we going to be doing with this episode here today?
Well, first, I'd like to talk about why this show exists. Then, I crunched some numbers, some math about our past episodes. And then finally, just real quick, go through every episode like, wow, was that a good score? Was that a bad score? I don't fucking know. Let's talk about this show and me and Riley. Like, me and Riley were college roommates, and we became good friends, and we were living together.
And then, you know, someone in China decided to eat a pangolin and fuck the entire world up. I wonder what pangolin tastes like.
I thought it was a bat.
It tastes like world destruction.
Yeah, and hey, let's not blame that guy entirely. There were millions upon millions of people who I hate, who have caused this pandemic to just keep being a thing. I thought it would be over by now, and now we got this fucking Delta variant because of vaccine patents causing things to mutate in other countries, and then people in the US spreading it because they won't get fucking vaccinated. I have a lot of... Let's not talk about that. Let's not talk about that because it makes me angry. Let's talk about this show. To be honest, the reason I started this show is because, I want an excuse to talk about superheroes and stuff with my friend. Don't want to lose this friendship. I honestly lost a few friendships because the pandemic just making it so I haven't seen people in more than a year.
Yeah, I remember listening to this thing on the radio while driving to work one day about how everyone now is creating a podcast because they're just stuck in their homes doing whatever. And I said to myself, I'm never going to make a podcast. I don't know. That's not something I have any interest in. 2 days later, Casey texted me, hey, you want to do a podcast? And I went, fuck yeah. Now we're here.
Hey, I'm a basic bitch, Riley. How have you not gone that through your head now?
Oh, I have. I just didn't want to say it to call you out because I'm trying to work on myself. Casey, because the pandemic made all of his classes go online, he decided to stay home for the year, and I moved down to Chicago. And because him and I had shared a room the last 2 years, and we still wanted to talk and have these conversations. Like, this podcast is basically a more structured version of our conversations in our dorm on a daily basis. So we just figured we still want to talk, still want to keep in touch, and still want to have these nerdy, geeky conversations. In order to make sure that the pandemic didn't prevent that from happening, we started this podcast. And we've grown a lot, learned a lot, seen a lot of new stuff, seen a lot of really bad stuff, and it's just been a wild ride.
Yeah. Over the past year or so, we've reviewed close to 50 films. Like, what is it exactly? 46. We've reviewed 46 films.
And we've had a bunch of other discussions. We've changed the format to the show a few times. We've explored the most mainstream MCU stuff, as well as the really obscure Riki-Oh, the story of Ricky, and Repo, the genetic opera. And I'm glad that we have included a sense of diversity with the types of films that we watch. Like, we have the more mainstream stuff like Batman, Iron Man, Death Note, stuff like that. We also have a lot of obscure stuff like Zardoz and Rikio, the straight-to-TV Justice League movie. I like this sense of variety that we've had.
Yeah, it's a fine line. And over all that stuff, we've had some good films and some bad things. Like, just looking at the scores, on the high end, we have a bunch of films that got an average score of 8.25, but then we had Little Shop of Horrors, Superman the Movie, and Rocky all come in at 8.5. Spider-Man come in at 8.75. Die Hard and The Matrix come in at 9.0. And then, tied for a top spot, Alien and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, both at 9.5. And then on the bottom end, oh jeez. Well, first off, there's like 6 different films that got 5.5, like Repo, Batman Forever, Death Note, Super Mario Brothers, Zardoz, Godzilla vs. King Kong. But like the bottom, the worst films. The Last Airbender at 3.75, Justice League of America at 3.75, Captain America, the 90s one, at 2.5, Howard the Duck at 2.5, the Star Wars Holiday Special at 1.75, and then Plan 9 from Outer Space at 1.25.
Oh yeah, those movies were fucking awful. And it is worth noting, I know we talked about this multiple times in the show, it's like Casey's how he grades a movie, it's more like a school type of grading scale where 7 is a D, you know, or a C minus.
Yeah, like I give a lot of 8s or 8.5s because that's like, yeah, it's a B. It's a B. A lot of movies we watch are Bs. And then there's a lot of movies we watch are Ds. Like those are the two that come up a lot, Bs and Ds.
Yeah, absolutely. So Casey's perspective on how he's grading is more along that school system grading scale, whereas I'm on like a 1 to 10. Like Captain America, I think I gave that a 1, didn't I?
Oh yeah, I've actually never given out a 1. You've given out 4 different ones.
Yeah. Well, you got close on Plan 9. Point is, there's a difference between our grading scale, and I don't really necessarily have a problem with us two having a difference in that. It's like, if you want to know our perspectives, you've just listened to an hour-long review of us talking about it. The final number that I give, I don't know, I'm not saying I have a problem with it, but to me, at the end of the day, it's pretty arbitrary in compared to the previous hour of conversations that we've had. You know, that's my review. Not necessarily a number at the end, the conversation.
I actually have some, like, Excel spreadsheet on our scores. First off, I do this probably too much. Like I said, yeah, 8.5. It's a B-tier movie. A lot of movies fall into that. I've done that 11 different times. And, like, a lot of them, you give it, like, an 8 or a 7.5, so there's a whole bunch of films cluttered around that area. Like, I've given 11 8.5s, I've given 8 9s, 7 7s, 5 7.5s, 3 8s, which is a weird dip. And then on the bottom side, I've only given 1 each of the scores, 6 and down. Like, if I give a score under a 6, you don't want to see that film. Ugh. And my average score that I give out is 7.35 rounded. By contrast, we got you. You are much more scattershot. Your most common scores are 8 and 4, both of which you've given out 7 times.
I can see that.
You've also given out a lot of 5s, a lot of 7s, a lot of 7.5s. Yours is not really like a bell curve like mine. And on average, you give a score of 6-ish.
Okay.
Well, 5.989130435, but 6.
That on the surface level sounds pretty depressing because, like, that's my average score. But then you remember that amongst the movies that we are talking about are the Star Wars Holiday Special, Captain America 1990, fucking Last Airbender, you know? Like, there's a lot of stuff that's pulling it down, but also a lot of stuff is just average. Not that I hate it. Like at the end of the day, I'm looking at the scores for our first review, Death Note. You gave it a 7, and I gave it a 4. I mean, I know at the end of the day, you like that movie a lot more than I did, and in hindsight, I probably did go a little harsh on it. I was re-listening to some of that recently, actually. Like, you could just hear it in my voice. Not yours, Casey, but mine in particular, where I was like, definitely very new to this, and it's just the way I held the conversation and made my points, it just felt very amateur. But at the end of the day, like, I gave it a 4, but if I were to give it like an A, B, C, or D, like from that grading scale, I'd probably have given it the same thing you did. So to me, that's on par with each other.
I'm too gentle and honestly just give 8.5s out when I can't think of a score. And you're just harsh and arbitrary. And we balance each other out and give it more accurate scores usually. Our overall is 6.679. Yeah, that's good, considering the clunkers we've watched. And actually, let's get into the actual reviews. You brought up Death Note. That was our pilot. Actually, initially, I pitched the show to you as just doing superhero movies. But then you said, hey, I'd like to review Death Note because I just finished watching the anime, so we pivoted to adaptations of nerdy films, and then eventually just nerdy films.
Like we said, the show's become a long way.
I stand by what I said in that review, like, it's a terrible adaptation, and it's a very poorly paced film, but I like Death Note a lot more than most of the really shitty adaptations we do.
Oh yeah,
because it, like, added something. Like, The Last Airbender, that's a bad adaptation, and there's nothing from it that it did better than the original that you could then take into the original. Like, I do think there were some good ideas in that Death Note movie. It was a terrible Death Note movie, but I like creepier Ryuk. I like the Final Destination deaths. Like, that movie was bad, but it had some elements that could be put in a good Death Note movie.
I mean, I definitely think that the general populace definitely goes way overboard when it comes to hating this movie.
There are far worse American anime adaptations out there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, they did legitimately try with that.
And they fucked up, but they tried, and I appreciate trying.
I feel like this movie was good intentions that were just, at the end of the day, misguided. At the end of the day, personally, I've said it before and I'll say it again, I personally prefer a big swing and a miss as opposed to something that just is meh and plays it safe, you know?
Overall, it got a score of 5.5. It's low tier. That's like 5.5. It's one of our most common average scores. That's like the barrier of this is a bad movie, right above this is one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, what a great way to start the show, now that I look at that.
Yeah, we set ourselves up by just going on a movie that we can talk about how much we like. And after that, we had a discussion, because we used to do discussions all the fucking time. We talked about how Marvel should introduce Fox characters into the MCU. A lot of what I said still applies, although something I didn't think of when we did that episode is that Marvel would introduce the actor from a Fox movie playing the same character, except not really. His name is Boner.
I remember having a conversation with my father over FaceTime when that episode of WandaVision, that cliffhanger episode happened, where it was revealed that Evan Peters was playing Quicksilver. And I was like, dude, this is big. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but it's a big change. Like, fucking 2 weeks later. I texted him like, never mind.
We're recording this like 2 or 3 days after the Spider-Man No Way Home trailer came out. Like, is it just gonna end with revealing that Doc Ock is actually his father, Dick Boner? I don't trust Marvel. While people are theorizing Mephisto because it's an adaptation of One More Day, or more accurately, One Moment in Time, but like, I can't trust Marvel anymore!
I mean, I do think it is interesting. Since that was our second episode, it's been a year. The MCU is a year older since we had that conversation, and a lot has changed. I remember in that review, I said that I'm not 100% sure that Deadpool should be in the MCU. Now it's confirmed that he's going to be in the MCU, and Ryan Reynolds is working on the third installment, and Kevin Feige is excited about it. So,
and they did have a little non-canon crossover. It's like on the same level of canon as the Team Daryl shorts, but like Korg and Deadpool talking about that movie that their actors are in.
Yeah. I still think, I mean, the Fantastic Four are very easy to introduce into the MCU. The X-Men, I still a fan of my idea, how they need to just introduce mutants as a new species that starts to get a lot of hate, and then the Sokovia Accords become the Mutant Registration Act.
This is a blind spot in my Marvel Comics universe. Aren't the Eternals in the comics connected to the mutants? Like, they
Yes.
bioengineered the mutant gene thousands of years ago? Or was that the Celestials they worked for? I don't know.
It was the Celestials. The Celestials, which created the Eternals. Basically, the Celestials, their whole thing is they create life. And because they're immortal, they just watch it as a sense of enjoyment, from what I understand. And they created early primitive humans from, like, the earliest stages of life in the universe. And they implanted the mutant gene that eventually, billions of years down the line, the mutants are going to be created just to see what happens. So the rumor is that since the Eternals are going to be in the MCU and the Celestials are confirmed in the trailers, we're going to get a scene that hints at the creation of the mutants coming soon. It's very tricky to introduce the X-Men into the greater Marvel universe, especially the cinematic universe, but it's worth a shot, obviously. And Marvel's willing to take chances after that Spider-Man trailer, so.
I'm gonna say, and I can't believe I'm saying this, the MCU should take some notes from the CW verse. Like, their Crisis on Infinite Earth, it had cameos of a ton of live-action DC stuff. It had a cameo from Batman 89, and it reintroduced Brandon Routh's Superman. Like, have old stuff be alternate universes and maybe do callbacks to crossovers. But honestly, not with the X-Men films. Like, I don't really think the reboot-ish trilogy, like the After Time's been fucked with, they have new actors now. I don't really want them back. Evan Peters maybe, but, well.
I mean, he's Boner now.
Yeah.
That's his legacy in the MCU. But, I mean, don't you think that's a little weird? Like, we're celebrating getting Alfred Molina and
because he was
Willem
a good
Dafoe.
actor in Spider-Man 2 is why. I don't even remember the names of any of the actors besides Evan Peters and James McAvoy, who were on the new team.
But I'm just saying, don't you think it is weird that we are celebrating the Spider-Verse being introduced with all the villains from the previous non-MCU films to come in, yet we're all collectively like, no, we want them to completely reboot the X-Men. Don't you think that's interesting? Not saying I have a problem with it, and I do feel bad for the actors in the Fox X-Men series because most of them have expressed interest in returning. Sure, it was a huge part of their lives, but I don't know. If I were Kevin Feige's position, personally, I'd just be like, you know what? We're going to start over and do our own thing.
So anyway, after we talked about that, we reviewed Batman, the Tim Burton one, where Batman kills a bunch of people, which is a good movie. It's a movie I have problems with, but overall, not a bad movie.
I know we talked about this in the review, but I do find it very interesting. Like you said, there's a lot of problems with it. As a Batman movie, it falls short, but that said, it is arguably one of the most important pieces of Batman media ever made.
Oh, definitely.
In terms of its influence on the public's perception of Batman and how Batman would be portrayed, because this was a huge influence on the animated series, and that is considered the definitive portrayal of Batman. We wouldn't have that portrayal of it, arguably, if it weren't for this movie, which isn't the greatest Batman movie. So that's just crazy to me.
We ended up giving it an 8 out of 10, which I think is fair. It's a movie that I'm glad exists. I just wish it was better.
I mean, I love the movie. I've seen it a lot growing up.
The next thing we ended up doing was a weird thing. We haven't done something like this since, where we just talked about the character development of Bruce Banner in the MCU. That was a weird episode, although I feel like that's the best way to talk about Bruce Banner, because he has a definite arc, but he only gets a few scenes of character development per movie spread across 10 years.
Right, exactly. That was the purpose of Ragnarok, Infinity War, and Endgame. They basically all collectively said, look, we're not giving the Hulk his own movie. So what we're gonna do, if we were to do a movie, what would we do with it? Okay, we got a story. Let's spread that across those 3 films.
And it's a great story that happens 90% off screen.
Yeah, exactly.
Why did they have to cut that scene from Infinity War? Like, the original plan for it was that he becomes Professor Hulk in that battle and finally gets his development and then bursts out of the Hulkbuster armor as Professor Hulk. Like, why no do that?
I've seen that deleted scene with like all the CGI that's like very much so in the early stages. But I don't know, part of me feels like doing it that way in particular might have felt a little out of place. That said, it would have been slightly better than just, oh yeah, cut to the back of his head and that diner in Endgame. Oh yeah, this happened a couple years ago.
He doesn't smash once in the last two Avengers movies.
Well, he does kind of. He calls it
Yeah, he
gratuitous as he
smashes
does.
a car like, and now I gotta take my shirt off.
I mean, I think the consensus between you and I for this episode was at the beginning of the MCU, it was pretty strong, his character arc, but towards the end, they actually tried giving him more of an arc and it just fell flat.
The first two Avengers movie, especially the first one, those were good Hulk movies, and the other two Avengers movies weren't. We did 3 Marvel stuff in a row back then, a lot of Marvel, but we did Captain America in 1990. Oh boy, was that a film. Still one of our lowest. At the time, it was our lowest.
Hey, Casey, I need you to pull the car over. I'm getting car sick.
Oh, shit.
Okay, now I'm stealing your car. Yeah, it took you a second, didn't
I forgot about that. Yeah, that movie wasn't good.
No, honestly, what's crazy to me, I know I mentioned this in the review, is that this movie is basically the first 3 movies that Captain America is in the MCU. This is basically the story of the first Avenger, Avengers, and Winter Soldier to an extent.
Yeah, but bad.
Yeah, but bad. This is not a bad Captain America movie. It's just terrible execution. It is. Oh, no, don't get me wrong. In conception, in concept, it's not a bad film. And I can see this being a potential cult classic if it weren't so goddamn boring.
Yeah, you know it's a bad movie when I distinctly remember I said something like, yeah, the president's more interesting and way cooler than Captain America. Also, I remember that's one of the first moments where I realized, oh, hey, maybe the show has potential. Like when we were talking about that and we realized, holy shit, Captain America destroyed the cure for polio.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, that was fucking hilarious.
And then after that, we talked about other Marvel villains besides Captain America. We did our pitches. You gave your one about Flag Smasher causing a world war. I did my one about the Dark Avengers with like the Sentry and Ghost.
Yeah, because it fits into the MCU. That was really good. That was an episode that got cut into 2. We were gonna have one episode. We would each pitch a Marvel villain-centric movie and a DC villain-centric movie. But then we actually got to the recording of it.
And it was so fucking long.
Yeah, so we just cut that into 2 episodes.
Speaking of that DC one, which we did 2 weeks later, I think the DC pitches were better. I really like my DC pitch. I like your pitch.
Yeah.
My rogues rob a Vegas casino and your Suicide Squad versus Superman.
Yeah, Suicide Squad heists the Fortress of Solitude. And I remember in that one in particular, by the way, these are episodes 6 and 8. I remember you said something like, isn't it sad that we as like just college students can come up with these ideas for movies that are exponentially better than the Suicide Squad movies that we got in a week?
Yeah, and I kind of cringed thinking back at that because that's so douchey to say. But I mean, it's not wrong looking back at that Suicide Squad movie, which is now even worse because the next Suicide Squad movie came out and it is a functioning movie. Like, it's a good movie,
Yeah.
but not. It didn't have to be a good movie to be better than the 2016 one. God, that movie's awful. Like, we shit on the Zack Snyder films a lot, justifiably so. He was not making the worst DCEU movies.
No. But what's funny is that I remember you saying something like, isn't it sad that we made something better in a week? I don't know if I mentioned this in the review, but my DC one literally took 45 minutes. I came up with a better idea than the actual $100 million action movie in 2016 in 45 minutes.
And if you have more than 45 minutes, you could have made something a lot better. Like, how was that movie made?
I don't know. We should probably save all that for our review of Suicide Squad. because there's a lot to talk about.
And in between those two episodes, we talked about Sonic the Hedgehog.
I mean, that movie was okay.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun. They're making a sequel to it. They cast Idris Elba as Knuckles, which is a casting.
Honestly, Idris Elba is just good for him. He just does what he wants.
Idris Elba is the best type of actor where they're a phenomenal actor who has no bearing on quality and just appears in the worst shit ever and is the best part of it.
And then will appear in the greatest stuff ever immediately after. And his career will be made better. Love that guy so much.
Sonic the Hedgehog got, what did it get? It got 7 out of 10. It was fun.
Yeah, I mean, I do think the design is obviously exponentially better than what that first trailer was. And it made the movie better in general because this movie's a live action cartoon. But having a quote unquote realistic looking Sonic the Hedgehog, that's not a cartoon. So it would have made the entire movie shitty.
Ultimately, that movie was fine. It left me wanting something better, like that opening scene in Green Hill Zone. That was way cooler than anything else.
I mean, hopefully they'll tighten it up for the sequel and take it to, the Sonic the Hedgehog universe and not fucking Montana with the Donut Lord.
And after that, we went on to Superman the movie, which I gave like a 9 out of 10. At the time, it was our highest reviewed movie. Yeah, that was a bit generous. You gave it an 8, so 8.5. I do like that movie, though.
I think that the first act is a little weird. The third act bites off a bit more than it could chew and is a little choppy. But that second act, man, god damn, that is Superman. That's an incredible portrayal of Superman, and holy shit, does Christopher Reeve kill it.
It was the first real big-budget live-action superhero movie, and it holds up.
That scene where Clark meets up with Lois for their date, and Lois kind of goes into her bedroom to change, and Clark just kind of like switches into Superman mode, and he's like smiling at her. Seeing that transformation like that, god damn, I was thoroughly impressed.
For our 10th episode, we talked about the lamest comic book characters. Like, what did we have? We had The Wall, Dog Welder. Like, what else did we have in that episode?
I had Matter Eater Lad, Hindsight Lad, Skin, and Maggot.
I forgot about that. Oh, I had the guy who got beat up by David Letterman and US1, who also is a cool character, but he's just a trucker. Why, Marvel? Ten-Eyed Man! I had fucking Ten-Eyed Man. Defeated by throwing a cactus, which he catches with his eyeballs. Ugh.
That was a fun episode.
I wouldn't mind doing a sequel to it. Well, we did do sequels, but like sequels. You know what I mean. A Fast 9 instead of a Hobbs and Shaw to it.
The lamest comic book characters, part 2. I'm down for that.
And we reviewed Iron Man, which...
I liked it.
I like Iron Man. I've said both in that and then more eloquently in one of my video essays, my problems with that film's war and terror stuff. But overall, yeah, it's decent. Pretty good.
I mean, it's no small feat having started the MCU. There are parts of it that have not aged well at all. But I still think it is an important film, and there's a lot to like about it. And RDJ, goddamn, that man is incredible.
Also, like... I'm still not sure what you were saying. Like, your whole point in that review is that you didn't think that the focus character was Iron Man. What the fuck were you on about?
It was just some stupid idea I had. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Neither do I. I didn't even think I knew. I didn't even think I knew.
After that, we discussed, should Batman kill the Joker? And our conclusion unanimously was like, no, but someone fucking should. Like, why is this Bruce's job? There are other heroes in Gotham. Hey, Jason, stop trying to make your father, who has a lot of issues about killing, do this, and just put a bullet in this guy's head.
Yeah, hey, Wonder Woman, who is, an ancient warrior. How about you cut his head off? Like, it would be no trouble. I mean, we talked a lot about philosophical ideologies and what Batman represents to the city of Gotham, and it was our most philosophical episode, I would argue. Yeah, it was a good one. Batman shouldn't kill, but I don't know, the embodiment of death in the DC universe. I don't know. They could probably take care of that shit.
Next on the chopping block was Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, or more accurate, considering what we focused on in that review, Harry Potter and Dumbledore's many, many lawsuits over the deaths of children at this death trap of a school. Like, the Harry Potter movies, they're these nostalgic things. They're filled with wonder, you know? None of this world building makes any sense if you think about for more than 2 seconds, and also all these children should be dead.
Professor Dumbledore, there's a giant Nazi army at the front gates. Well, what are you gonna do about it, Harry? Motherfucker, I'm 12. Like, shit. I mean, I think the movie, speaking from the perspective of the movie, it's a very, very faithful adaptation of the novel.
Yeah.
I do think it's a really good movie with a lot of nostalgia and created an entire genre in pop culture, or an entire aesthetic in pop culture. But, you know, you gotta face the facts of the reality of the situation. You know, gotta review it objectively.
Yeah. Also, fuck J.K. Rowling, which is something we have to say because she just won't stop.
Mm-hmm.
And then we reviewed Riccio. I love that movie.
So
it's
do
a
I.
very, very dumb movie. It's kinda cheap. But goddamn, that movie is cool.
This was the first movie that you and I ever saw together, so
Yeah.
it was only fitting that during our podcast we would talk about it. Great movie, so over the top, crazy. There's a part where Ricky has his tendon in his forearm severed, so he just uses his mouth to tie it back together.
Oh, God. Do not watch that movie if you're squeamish about gore.
But watch it if you want to have a fucking amazing time with your buddies, maybe a couple drinks. Just have a great time. Such a good movie, especially the English dub.
After that, we had Batman Returns, which I really liked how that episode turned out. I feel like at the time it was probably our best episode. I'm not sure why. It was a good episode.
We had a lot to talk about, you know? This was our first sequel, if I'm not mistaken. Like, sequel to a movie that we'd already reviewed. And there was a lot to build off of from the previous one, a lot to compare to and analyze. So that movie's so fucking bizarre at times that there is a lot to talk about.
That movie, the more you think about it, the more dumb it is. Whose idea was it to have Penguin not even have motives, like to have Christopher Walken have to convince him to pull off his evil plan? It's great.
Yeah.
God, that's a dumb movie, but it's well shot, which got to 7.5, but it's also a very stupid movie at times.
Eat floor. High fiber.
God. And then we went on to Die Hard, a Christmas special-ish thing, which for a while was our highest reviewed film, and it's still up there. Like, Die Hard is such a good movie.
There's a reason why it is as beloved as it is today and spawned 4 sequels, each with varying qualities. John McTiernan killed it. Yeah, there's really not much else to say. Just, it's a great 80s action movie that really still holds up today because it doesn't fall victim to the tropes and cliches of the over-the-top, just cheesy, forgettable action movies of the time. It really makes itself its own and is legitimately a great film.
And speaking of legitimately great films, The Amazing Spider-Man, which that's probably one of the bigger disagreements we've had on quality. Like, I like that movie. It's a very, very flawed movie, but there's a lot to like in it.
Yeah, I'm not arguing with you there. I just think for me, the movie does have a couple really great visual moments, but that in and of itself is not enough for me to say it's a good or great movie. I just think overall it's very bland, and they should have just let Sam Raimi make Spider-Man 4.
Well, I mean, he's directing a Marvel movie again, and they're having a Spider-Man crossover movie that's featuring characters from The Amazing Spider-Man. So.
Yeah, but that is the biggest disagreement we've had.
Andrew Garfield was a good Spider-Man. He just had not the best written films. I want him to get redemption in the inevitable Spider-Verse movie, is my hot take.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Obviously, that was probably our biggest difference in opinion.
Actually, no. There is one bigger that I'm still confused by. But before that, we had Santa Claus is an Omega-level mutant, where he just talked about the fact that in Marvel and DC, Santa Claus is a character, and there's so much weird shit with him. He tried to fuck She-Hulk once. He sold the North Pole to the Nazis. Superman kidnapped him. Like Marvel and DC, they go all out on their crazy shit with Santa.
It's bizarre.
And let's see, then we had the Star Wars Holiday Special, which was just so fucking bad.
It's atrocious. Like, it's a disgrace to Star Wars. And that's Star Wars.
It's a disgrace to cinema.
It's a disgrace to straight-to-TV movies.
God, what the fuck were they thinking when they made that?
It's just fucking bad. Like, what happens when you have Tommy Wiseau write a Star Trek movie? This is what you get. Not Star Wars, Star Trek.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, speaking of bad stuff, we did Zardoz, which, good ideas, but also half of it is just Sean Connery being rapey, so, yeah, mixed bag.
A killer costume, though. I looked it up on Amazon, and there is that costume on Amazon. I sent it to Casey, and he said, and I quote, "Well, it's been nice knowing you. No, we're no longer friends." And I don't blame him.
Yeah, we're just doing the show out of an obligation at this point.
Yeah, we don't talk apart from this.
Speaking of disagreements, which we were saying earlier, but we had to go in chronological order, Justice League The New Frontier, you did not like that. You gave it a 4. I gave it an 8.
Yeah, I mean,
there were a lot of really good ideas in that movie that just didn't get enough time to be fully explored. I actually read the book it's based on afterwards, which does a much better job, but that was our biggest disagreement.
Was it? Oh, okay. I mean, for me, a 4 is it's not bad, but it's also not good. For me personally, a 4 is forgettable. That's why, later on, the Justice League of America, you really didn't like that. I just thought it was forgettable. And that's why I gave it a 4 and you gave it a lower grade than I did. That was the first. We'll get to that later.
Yeah. Oh, God. I just realized that makes it's so much meaner. Yeah, this is about the same quality as Justice League of America.
I just really don't remember a whole lot from it. There were some really good ideas, but just because there's some good stuff that wasn't executed well, guess what? They weren't executed well, so it's not that great.
After that, we had James Bond, Dr. No. Technically, it's just called Dr. No. None of the James Bond movies are called James Bond anything.
Yeah, that one was alright.
That one was a fun review, because just pointing out, Jesus Christ, James Bond is the worst secret agent! Why do you keep drinking poison?
Why do you keep announcing yourself to every woman that you meet and then hook up with them?
You horny fucking imbecile.
Yeah, this was that part where we had a string of episodes. Zardoz, New Frontier, and Dr. No. It was just 3 episodes back to back where it was whatever.
Unfortunately, we had Amazing Spider-Man and Star Wars Holiday Special before it, so at least we had some good stuff to jump off of.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Dr. No, it's pretty harmless, but then you remember there's a shit ton of yellowface and a lot of offensive portrayals of Jamaican people. Then it's oh yeah, it's not so harmless anymore, I guess.
After that, we did X-Men, which... yeah, I like X-Men. It's a good movie.
That was a big surprise to me. And I know I brought this up at the beginning of the episode because it's I saw this movie as a kid a couple times. Was never really the biggest fan of it. But I rewatched it as an adult and I gained such a big new appreciation for it that I was that's a lot better than I remember. So I was fully expecting to have another meh week. But... turned out really like that movie.
After that, we pitched Star Wars movies. You did your Clone Wars, Black Ops, turn against the Jedi Order thing. I did, what if Star Wars Holiday Special was good?
Yeah.
And I don't think my pitch was as good as, my Marvel or DC pitches, but I do what if Holiday Special was good as an idea?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I remember when you told me, I was son of a bitch. This guy, my guy.
And then for our 25th episode, we reviewed The Last Airbender. It's one of the worst movies we've ever reviewed. It was our longest review by a big margin. Usually these are about an hour. That was an hour 50 and a half. We had a lot to say. It was like going over every second because every second was bad. And also we had a guest in there. We had Raylan.
Yeah. Raylan Stevens, who's gonna be our roommate this upcoming semester. He was my roommate last year. And he's gonna be in a couple more reviews coming up shortly, like one in October that we're gonna do. He's gonna be a guest star on. And probably some more in the near future. He basically is just like, hey, we're talking about a movie that you might have a lot to say on. You want to be a part of it? Yeah, sure.
We went from the horror that was The Last Airbender to Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which is just a really good movie.
Talk about whiplash. I mean, like, whoa. One of the worst movies to, what, isn't this like tied for a first?
Yeah, with Alien.
I mean, goddamn. Charlie Kaufman, Jim Carrey, Kate Winslet. Eternal Sunshine's such a good movie.
We reviewed Man of Steel, which there's nothing more we can say. We've done 3, soon to be 4 episodes talking about this guy's inability to write a Superman movie. Like, yeah, I don't like Man of Steel.
It wasn't written by Zack Snyder. It was just directed by him.
Okay, never mind. I take it back.
It was written by, I think, David S. Goyer, and I'm pretty sure Christopher Nolan actually had a hand in the plot.
Wow. That must have been his off day.
He actually personally called up Zack Snyder and was like, hey, I have a Superman script for you. I don't want to direct it, so I thought of you. Maybe Nolan was smart on that one.
Ew, I wrote this and it isn't good. Someone else make it.
My problem wasn't necessarily the directing, though it could have been better. I think my problem was the script.
Honestly, a lot of people talk about, like, objective criticism and impartiality. Yeah, that isn't real. There's no such thing. I refuse to even try to be objective because that's not real. You can't be an objective critic because criticism is inherently subjective. But anyway, that's a thing where it comes up in the show where you can see that I'm not objective. Like, Man of Steel is a bad adaptation. Other stuff we've reviewed, like, say, Street Fighter, are also bad adaptations, but I hate Man of Steel because I like Superman.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked about this in the past. While I'm not personally the biggest fan of Zack Snyder's work, I don't know, I respect him for having his style and just making the movies his way. From that angle, I respect him as a filmmaker, but that said, not the biggest fan of a lot of his movies. But from there, we talked about King Kong vs. Godzilla in honor of Godzilla vs. Kong coming out on HBO Max. We watched the one from the 60s.
Wasn't good.
Which was the third Godzilla movie. I think it was the first one in color.
Probably, yeah.
And that started the whole, like, every year a new Godzilla movie came out, and it was just him versus another giant monster, and they made some interesting changes to the King Kong lore, but interesting doesn't necessarily mean good. I mean, the movie it wasn't good at all. It was as good as you could imagine King Kong's face. Just look up King Kong versus Godzilla costumes. King Kong's face, that pretty much sums up my face watching the movie. It was bad. But it was fun bad, you know?
And this episode's running long, and I know we have things to do after it, so let's just speed this up.
Yep.
Thor. I liked it more than I thought I would. It's not that bad. Tom Hiddleston and Chris Hemsworth were good castings, but spent too much time on Earth.
It's better than a lot of people give it credit for. A lot of people just go to Thor Ragnarok as being the only good Thor movie, but I don't know. I think that there's a lot to like about this one. And then there's the Dark World just in between those.
WandaVision and the future of the MCU. I really enjoyed WandaVision. I would say of the 3 shows we've gone so far that it's my favorite. It's a very messy show, but it had a lot of really good things in it. And in that, we talked about what we thought the future MCU movies would be in terms of quality. Falcon and the Winter Soldier angered me so much I made a 3-part video essay on it. Loki was better than I expected, then worse than I expected. Black Widow was fine. Like, I'm pretty sure I said that, I'm excited for Black Widow because I like Taskmaster as a character.
My thoughts on WandaVision, I think of, like, the anticipation, waiting a week, every day, like every Friday, getting together with my roommates, my friends, just watching this new episode. I think from that respect, it was the most entertaining of the 3 shows. But in terms of it, this is probably my least favorite because it just disappointed me. As the show went on, it just became more of a disappointment to me. But there is a lot. I just had so much fun waiting every week, but in hindsight, meh.
Chamber of Secrets. It was very similar to the first Harry Potter movie and had all the same flaws.
Yes, I have the exact same opinion. However, I would argue that the mystery is a bit better because, they're actually investigating it instead of saying, oh yeah, Snape is responsible for that the entire 2.5 hours. They're like, oh, I wonder who's responsible for all this. And they're actually investigating what's going on. Then again, who it was revealed was the girl that was in 3 scenes and had 1 line of dialogue. So, not the greatest mystery.
J.K. Rowling cannot write mysteries, which is why it's great that every single Harry Potter movie is mostly a mystery. Also obligatory fuck J.K. Rowling.
So, Chamber of Secrets, again, great adaptation. Same flaws as the first one.
Space Jam. What can we say about Space Jam? So there's a new Space Jam movie out, and it's the first Space Jam was a soulless corporate cash grab, and the second one is a soulless corporate cash grab that was competently made. Spaceman New Legacy is just Warner Brothers saying, hey, we own everything. But Space Jam was that without any good Looney Tunes shit.
Yeah, pretty much. This movie was bad. I'm glad that a new generation of people our age and younger are getting acquainted to the Looney Tunes because I was a big Looney Tunes fan as a kid. It's just, goddamn, was this bad. And it was fun bad, But, I don't know, not fun enough for me to warrant a sequel. And side note, I've heard that sequel is atrocious.
Oh yeah, it is, but it's a sequel to an atrocious movie already.
Very true. After that, we did Justice League of America, the failed TV pilot from 1997.
Damn, that was bad.
It really was. God damn. Like I said, we talked about earlier, I thought it was forgettable, but god damn, there were bad parts to that movie.
One of only 3 movies that I hated more than you.
Yeah.
The others being Rocky IV and Predator.
Yeah, this was the first movie that you gave a lower score than I did. Then after that, it was Alien, the classic Ridley Scott movie from the 70s, starring Sigourney Weaver, John Hurt, a lot of other people.
Probably the best thing we've reviewed.
Incredible cinematography. Everything about that movie is incredible, except for one shot with the android body. Other than that, movie's amazing. After that, we got another movie called Howard the Duck that's very similar to Alien, that I had a fucking blast watching. That was, again, another huge surprise for me. It's a horrible, and I gave it a terrible score. But goddamn was I having a great time watching it. Holy shit.
Yeah, and that's tied with Captain America 1990 for the worst superhero movie we've ever watched.
Casey, you hated it so much that I don't even think you finished it.
It was just so bland and mediocre. And the only times when I'm not just bored out of my mind are when I'm angry at how stupid it is.
Yeah, very true.
We talked about the weirdest comic book characters. Characters like Dog Welder 2, the Black Bomber, Marcus Immortus, Phantoma. I don't actually remember what you had.
The Beef, R.L. Stine's The Man Thing, Leather Boy. Leonard the Duck is my number 1. I remember that. I don't remember who number 2 is, but that was a fun episode. After that, we did the Super Mario Bros. Didn't hate it as much as I thought I would, but, still wasn't good.
It was interesting. It wasn't good, but it was interesting.
Yeah. I'm glad we reviewed it because that movie there's a lot to talk about, and I feel like I got a lot more out of the conversation we had in that review than actually watching it.
Let's see, Little Shop of Horrors, great musical. Little Shop of Horrors.
That's the one I think, looking back, I probably should have given a higher score to. I think I said in the review I probably won't watch it ever again. That movie was pretty fucking good.
Yeah, it's great.
It stuck with me. So, looking back, hindsight's 2020, I'd probably give this one a higher score than I gave it.
Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice Ultimate Edition is a very long title for a movie that was
also very, very long.
The director's cut made it comprehensible. It was still a stupid movie, but I could understand the plot.
That's the important thing. There is stuff to like about it. I think it's better than Man of Steel, personally. But that said, the DCEU has just been so screwed up since its inception. Like, it's unfortunate. It's so unfortunate. Especially unfortunate that Zack Snyder the studio cut a half an hour of his movie and just said, throw that in theaters. But still, that said, it's just kind of an movie for me.
After that, we went on to Blade Runner, which I really like.
Yeah,
I
did
love
too.
Blade Runner. It's
too.
a beautiful film.
Yeah. I prefer the sequel, but there is a lot
Oh
to
god,
get out of it.
sequel's my favorite movie ever, as I've said in the past. It's a masterpiece.
Yes, absolutely. Blade Runner, great movie. It's Ridley Scott's favorite that he's ever made. I mean, there's some weird shit. There's some flaws. I think this is a flawed masterpiece.
Like we said in that review, it's a film that's better to talk about just these interesting philosophical ideas and how it's shot and the symbolism than to actually watch. But goddamn, I love talking about that movie.
Yeah. So from there, we reviewed Spider-Man, the first Sam Raimi, Tobey Maguire film, which very cheesy, very campy. Some of it doesn't age well.
And it's the best superhero movie we've watched on this show.
Is it? Like, in terms of ratings?
In terms of ratings, yeah, and I'm not going to disagree with that.
Yeah, no.
God, it's cheesy. God, it's aged poorly, the special effects at times. But damn, that movie had heart.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? Come to think of it, now that I'm looking at this list, yep, it is the best superhero movie we reviewed thus far.
Not even close to the best superhero movie out there, but we only review the shitty superhero movies on this show, I guess.
And we reviewed some good ones, but that's neither here nor there. Damn great movie. Big nostalgic movie from my childhood. Great movie. After that, we did a discussion about whether or not superhero secret identities work, whether or not they do, our thoughts on that. That's pretty self-explanatory right there. It was a good discussion.
We reviewed Speed Racer. That is a movie. I like that movie. It's definitely deserving of being a cult classic. It's kind of a dumb movie. There's some questionable writing, and the special effects are hit or miss, but it's very stylized and fun.
Mm-hmm. I mean, except for what's the younger brother's name? Sparkle or whatever?
Oh god, Sprocket, I don't know what his name is.
Sparkle or something like that? I don't know.
Should have been aborted.
Yeah.
Is his name.
Yeah. Plan 9 from Outer Space.
Both our shortest review and our lowest score.
Yeah, honestly, I get why it's a cult classic. It just doesn't reach that level for me personally.
In fact, and I'm calling my shot now, I don't think we'll ever review something worse than that.
No.
Like I've talked about before, my philosophy that I save ones for truly vile movies, like the fucking things that the Nazis would made, like the most vile, bigoted shit ever. And I think I said once that I would never give a 1 on this show because there aren't any movies that fit that style that fall in our wheelhouse. There is one. I have thought of a movie that we very much could review. It's a nerd movie that I hate enough to get a 1, but you won't give it a 1, I don't think. But the point is, Plan 9 from Outer Space was bad.
Okay. Well, what is that movie, just out of curiosity?
I'm not going to say it to keep from spoiling the audience.
Okay.
So I'm just going to bleep myself out with a bleep. Actually, no. I'll bleep myself out with that sound effect, ooh, banana, from Donkey Kong 64. The movie I would give a 1 is... Oh, banana.
That is a great movie, my guy.
It's a really well-made movie, but the philosophy of it is fucking vile. It's a movie, like the whole point of that movie is don't criticize the US military for killing civilians because they aren't really people anyway, and we need a strong... It's a fucking fascist movie. Like, we'll review it eventually, I bet.
I'm not disagreeing with you at all. It's... I don't give a shit.
I'm the editor. I'm gonna make you ooh banana on that.
Okay. Yeah, cool. From there, we reviewed the Rocky Marathon, or Rockies 1 through 5. We also had Batman Forever, The Matrix, Black Widow, Worst Comic Book Characters, and Street Fighter. And I believe that's all that's out right now.
Repo the Genetic Opera's out, and Justice League 2017 will be out soon. And we still have in the can Predator and X2. And I don't really have anything to talk about these. They were too recent enough to check in on.
Yeah.
And in the future, we have a ton more movies we're reviewing. The Snyder Cut, Ready Player One, Killer Clowns from Outer Space, The Exorcist, Blade, like all of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. We have a ton of stuff coming up. Thank you for listening to the show for 55 episodes, assuming you didn't skip a lot of them, which would be fine. A few of the early episodes have pretty iffy audio.
What are you gonna do? But yeah, it's been a wild ride, and thank you.
We'll continue. Next week, we're reviewing the Snyder Cut.
Wow, that's next week, man.
And hey, it's just a series of reviews of films that people have strong opinions on, and a lot of them we said were shitty. But don't lose your head about it. As always, I'm Casey Jarms.
And I'm Riley Thorpe, and you can find this show on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and Twitter at Silver Age Silver Screen. You can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Riley James Thorpe, and on YouTube at Riley Thorpe. Casey, what about you?
Look, Casey on Twitter, Jarms Casey, JARMESCASEY. Post about all my shit there. Hey, I got a new book coming out. It's called Double Elimination of the Machine. It's about superheroes. It's a sequel to another book I wrote, which I'm pretty sure you can get for free on my website. Hey, go buy that. Is it even out yet? It's out in 2 days when this comes out, assuming I get this out on time. Go buy my book, and we'll be back next week to review the Snyder Cut and finally be done with Zack Snyder's versions of the Justice League. Yeah, this episode ended weirdly. I don't know what to say. 1 year of this shit! Let's see how many more years we do before we grow to hate each other and never talk again.